Late on the night of March 1st, 2026, the skies over the Persian Gulf erupted in an unprecedented barrage of missiles and drones. Across Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and many Gulf nations, the defenses lit up as Iran's missile forces executed long-range retaliatory strikes in response to a massive US-Israeli campaign targeting its military infrastructure. In Kuwait, 3 US Air Force F-15 Strike Eagles were tragically lost not to Iranian surface-to-air missiles, but to chaotic friendly fire amidst a saturated combat environment, underscoring just how complex this battlefield has become. Just days later, a KC-135 aerial tanker, a mainstay of American long-range air operations, was shot down in the Gulf, illustrating that even logistical link lines are now vulnerable under sustained attack. One of the most strategically important targets struck during Iran's retaliation was the radar complex near Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. This base is not just another American installation. It serves as the forward headquarters of United States Central Command, or CENTCOM, which coordinates US military operations across the Middle East. The radar system located at this base, the ANFPS-132 Block 5, plays a critical role in ballistic missile detection. With a detection range of nearly 5,000 kilometers and a cost of over $1 billion, the radar provides early warning in regional missile defense, including THAAD and the Patriot missile batteries. During the March 3rd Iranian missile barrage, missiles struck the radar complex. Satellite imagery later confirmed damage to structures and communications equipment. Iran claimed the radar was destroyed completely. US officials acknowledged the attack, but did not admit to the complete annihilation of the radar system. In modern warfare, radar systems are the eyes of the battlefield. If those sensors are disrupted, missile systems lose precious seconds of warning time. And in missile warfare, seconds can determine whether a target is successfully defended or destroyed. Meanwhile, Iranian drones penetrated Saudi and UAE airspace, forcing evacuations, and a major American radar facility at Al Udeid Air Base was damaged, disrupting strategic early warning networks. Then came the most far-reaching escalation yet. On 13 March 2026, US forces struck the Karg Island, the heart of Iran's oil export infrastructure. And the Pentagon deployed the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, currently based in Japan, and a marine expeditionary force to the region, broadening the scale of US options in the conflict. This is Operation Epic Fury, popularly being also known as the Operation Epic Blunder. The question now confronting everyone from Tehran to Washington is not merely who wins, but what kind of world will this war shape? Today, we take a deep dive into this escalating US-Israel-Iran conflict, examining the military moves, the strategic calculations, and the unseen forces shaping the battle across West Asia. I'm Qasim, and you're watching Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. Units from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and the ambitious assault ship USS Tripoli have been ordered to travel to the Middle East, according to US official sources. The arrival of the USS Tripoli, carrying roughly 2,500 strong Marine unit, signals more than just tactical reinforcement. It indicates that Washington is preparing for contingencies beyond air and sea power alone. Amphibious assault ships represent flexible power projection, evacuation capability, rapid strikes on coastal targets, or limited land operations where necessary. But invading Iran, the second largest country in the Middle East, with rugged mountains, fortified towns, and millions of civilians, would be far more challenging than any US deployment since Iraq or Afghanistan. Military analysts such as Shaheen Mudaris argue that even limited ground operations would expose American forces to high risk and protracted combat, echoing the painful lessons of past occupations. As the Iranian land forces are concentrated towards the northern border with Iraq, chances are that the US Marine forces might attempt short operations in the south of Iran, maybe attempt a physical invasion of the Karg Island. Iran's own military posture reinforces the deterrent. Tehran has publicly declared that any foreign boots on Iranian soil would be treated as an act of war, emphasizing its missile stockpiles, drone systems, and irregular forces ready to impose asymmetrical costs on any invading partner. Iranian commanders have stated directly that the missile forces can target American facilities across the region if provoked further, and that Iran's military is ready to respond to any escalation. High-ranking Iranian leaders have repeated these assertions in state media, declaring that the nation is not merely defending territory, but protecting its sovereignty against what leadership describes as external aggression and occupation planning. So while the United States prepares amphibious operations and contingency plans, most global analysts believe a full-scale ground invasion remains unlikely and strategically unsound, given Iran's depth and capacity to absorb and retaliate. In the most dramatic escalation yet of US-Iran confrontation, American forces carried out a precision strike on Kurd Island on March 13, 2026, a strategic hub that handles roughly Iran's 90% crude oil exports, destroying multiple Iranian military targets, including air defense systems, missile storage bunkers, and naval facilities, while for now sparing Iran's oil infrastructure itself. President Donald Trump framed the operation as a warning, saying the United States had obliterated military sites and would consider targeting oil facilities if Tehran continues to disrupt shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran responded defiantly, downplaying the damage to its energy sector and vowing retaliation, with Iran's military spokesperson threatening that any future attacks on energy infrastructure linked to the United States and its allies would prompt strikes on regional oil and gas facilities, describing them as legitimate targets in a broader conflict over control of global energy routes and regional power. This conflict didn't begin with Iranian missile launches. It began with a calculated air campaign by the United States and Israel aimed at degrading Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure. From Tel Aviv's perspective, Iran's growing capabilities represented an existential threat, and basically no one else. From Washington's perspective, the objective was framed as regional stability and non-proliferation. But alliances shape wars in complex ways. Analysts at the International Institute of Strategic Studies have observed that Israeli strategic imperatives, not least regime change or at least decisive military degradation, have driven early operation decisions. Washington, while providing the bulk of the firepower and the logistics, is perceived by many international observers as carrying out a war that is just not its own, that began as Israel's strategic confrontation. This perception is not limited to foreign capitals. Within the United States, polling data shows a majority of Americans now oppose expanded military involvement in Iran. Protest movements to coast have tied American strikes directly to what they describe as a foreign government's war. In effect, this conflict is not purely a US war or an Israeli war. It is a fusion of objectives, however unclear they might be, that have become indistinguishable in the battlefield, despite differing long-term goals in Washington and Jerusalem. The early narrative of this war assumed American military dominance would be near total, that air power, technology, and coalition logistics would overwhelm Tehran quickly. Reality has proven more complex. Iran's missile barrages have punched through layered air defenses. Its drones have forced evacuations and disrupted airspace in Gulf states. Radars have been damaged, interceptor systems have been overwhelmed in multiple engagements. Losses such as the KC-135 tanker and multiple F-15s remind the world that even advanced militaries can be vulnerable in a multi-domain warfare scenario. US forces now rely heavily on Gulf partners like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE for basing, aerial access, and logistic support. Initially, some allies were hesitant to fully commit, reflecting growing regional caution about entanglement and blowback. Western analysts argue this conflict shows that US military dominance, while still formidable, is no longer uncontested in the face of rapidly evolving asymmetric capabilities. Strategic influence is no longer defined solely by the largest military. It is defined by adaptability and perception, domains in which Iran has proven surprisingly resilient. The world's attention often focuses in on direct combat, but indirect support, the unseen hand, shapes outcomes as well. Neither Russia nor China has deployed troops in this conflict. Yet, Both have played pivotal roles in enhancing Iran's resilience and ability to sustain retaliation. Moscow has shared real-time military intelligence with Tehran, advising on how to exploit vulnerabilities in the US and allied deployments. Technologies and tactics developed through Russia's own conflict experiences, especially in Ukraine, have been shared directly with the Ukrainian command networks and drone units. Beijing's contribution has been much more technological and economic, but no less consequential. Advanced radar systems capable of tracking low observable aircraft, guidance packages for drones, encrypted communication software, and continued oil purchases often via shadow shipping have provided Tehran with strategic depth and economic lifeline. Diplomatically, Russia and China have shielded Iran at the United Nations Security Council, vetoing or softening condemnations of Iranian actions while criticizing US and Israeli strikes. This indirect support, subtle and unacknowledged in many Western capitals, allows Iran to continue operations without international isolation, a strategic advantage Washington and Tel Aviv had hoped to impose early in the campaign. As the conflict continues, multiple scenarios are possible. A negotiated ceasefire remains somewhat conceivable, but only if both sides perceive strategic advantage in ending the conflict rather than prolonging it. Iran has made it very clear that it is not looking for a ceasefire at this moment until all its conditions are met. A stalemate would reinforce Iran's new status as the resilient power and might prompt incremental diplomatic engagements. Regional escalation involving proxy networks, militia alliances, and contested nodes in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon remains a dangerous risk. Ground invasion by US or allied forces remains possible in limited scenarios, but is unlikely as a full approach given geographic and political constraints. A fourth possibility, increasingly recognized in strategic analysis, is that this war will not end quickly, and its long tail will define regional power balances for years to come. Now, where does Pakistan find its place in all of this? Pakistan remains officially neutral, yet its strategic importance cannot be overstated. As a neighbor to Iran, a partner to Saudi Arabia, and a nation with significant military and diplomatic ties to the US, Islamabad is positioned uniquely at this conflict's crossroads. Pakistan has offered diplomatic avenues, hosting indirect discussions with Gulf leaders and emphasizing de-escalation. Its armed forces, seasoned in managing border security in complex environments, are viewed as important regional stabilizers. The conflict's spillover risks, especially in Balochistan and along the western border, mean that Pakistan's military planners are watching closely, not just as observers, but as stakeholders in emerging regional order. Pakistan's balanced position may become increasingly important if negotiations and post-war settlement talks ever take place. The Pakistani nation's voice, military credibility, and diplomatic flexibility could shape the next phase of the West Asian geopolitics. The consequences of Operation Epic Fury are redefining the very structures of power in West Asia. In my opinion and analysis, there are 5 outcomes regardless of who wins or loses this war, which I would like to go line by line. First, regardless of what happens towards the end of this war, global sympathy towards Israel and the Jewish state has collapsed. The visibility of civilian suffering, the scale of destruction, and the perception of disproportionate use of force have prompted a profound reassessment of Israel's position in the world. The historical narrative that once protected it, rooted deeply in the memory of the Holocaust, has been overshadowed by modern perceptions of indiscriminate violence, genocide, and civilian harm. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, once insulated by diplomatic reverence, is now widely branded as a war criminal in global public discourse. His strategic autonomy sharply diminished without US support. Number 2. The perception of the US as the world's uncontested military superpower is ending. Losses of aircraft, tankers, radars, and air defense batteries, combined with Iran's sustained retaliations, have punctured the illusion of unassailable dominance. Global partners now hedge their support, recognizing that American technological superiority does not guarantee rapid strategic outcomes. Number 3. Iran is emerging as a major power within West Asia. Its ability to endure, adapt, and respond has elevated Iran's regional standing. Far from collapsing under the bombardment, Iran has demonstrated operational resilience and strategic depth, commanding respect and concern from neighboring states. Number 4. Israel's ability to expand its influence without challenge has been significantly constrained. Sustained Iranian resistance and coordinated regional pushback mean that any attempt by Israel to reshape borders or assert unilateral dominance now faces a real, credible opposition. Fifth, and finally, the Gulf states are rethinking and recalibrating their dependence on the US as a sole security provider. Rising energy disruptions, strategic uncertainties, and the perceived limits of American power have led to renewed engagement with Iran and a reassessment of long-term alliances. The 2026 Iran war has become far more than just a clash of missiles and jets. It has become a crucible for the global balance of power, testing the limits of military dominance, reshaping alliances, and redefining influence in West Asia. From Persian Gulf to Islamabad, from Tehran to Washington, the battlefield is no longer just terrain, it's perception, its resilience, and its strategic legitimacy. That's all on Radar Mode today. We'll be sure to keep you updated on the latest developments of the conflict. Remember, on Radar Mode, we just don't follow the news. We interpret the signals beneath the noise. This is Qasim signing off.